Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. And in this video, we're going to learn the programming language Crystal. We're going to learn it in one video, not the whole language, but the fundamentals, the basics. Um, and it's really not that hard to learn Crystal because Crystal borrows pretty heavily from Ruby syntax. It's essentially a compiled version of Ruby. So if you're not familiar with Ruby, Ruby is a programming language that was really popular, is popular because of particularly Ruby on Rails, its killer application backend framework, and it was made to be really easy to learn. Like the similar to Python, there really isn't much in the way of semicolons, and but unlike Python, which uses sort of indentation to tell like where one command ends and another one begins, Ruby uses like words like end. So basically, you start something and then eventually you end it. So Crystal really borrows that language. It allows you to have a compiled language, which allows you to have speed benefits and whatnot. But you can have the really fun and easy syntax of Ruby, plus some other differences here and there. Okay, so most of it's pretty straightforward. I mean, you assign a variable by just assigning it. Okay, again, like Python and Ruby, where I can just be like my var equals 5. And if you don't notice, I have the way I'm practicing Crystal is through repl.it. So you can just go right here to repl.it and you can practice Crystal in your browser. So that way you don't have to go install a bunch of stuff. You can just practice it, learn the language, and try it out. Okay, so my var equals 5. And then if I want to print it to the screen, like Ruby, it's puts. So I want to puts my var. Now one thing, it does take a little while to run because it's compiled. So when you're running it on REPL, I hit run, it's going to go compile it and then run it, which can sometimes, even for like something like this, can take a bit. Sweet. There it is, 5. Cool. Pretty straightforward. Okay, and again, you can assign strings. Okay. And again, I'm assuming that if you're watching this video, this is probably not your first programming language. Or you may already know, you probably know another language at this point. So I'm going to kind of not spend too much time dwelling on a lot of the fundamental concepts. If I would recommend one of my other series on other programming languages, particularly like either Python, JavaScript, Ruby, or Go, if you really kind of want me to kind of spend some time going through all the jargon and conceptual stuff. But again, like most languages, you had integers, which the number 5 was an integer. You have strings, so I can put words and sentences and quotation marks. I could actually do even a character. Okay, so I could just do the letter A. They actually do, like some programming languages have this distinction, some don't, where there's a type called char, or char, a character, which is just a single letter, versus a string, which is lots of letters and spaces and whatnot. Okay. So we have strings, we have char, and you have booleans, which means true or false. So I can be like my var equals true. So I can do all these things. And you don't have to use any kind of weird prefixes, no const, no let, no vars. You just say my var equals true. Ta-da. Okay, I mean there are constants, but I'm not going to get into constant syntax right now. And like Ruby, control flow gets a little bit more complicated because it's not just if statements. I could do an if statement, so we'll do my var equals 5. And the way this would work, okay, is you would put if my var is less than 5. Okay, then here you would put what happens. So we'll say puts my var, although good coding, you would just indent anyways, not required for Ruby. But if my var is less than 5, we're going to puts my var, and else we will puts 5 or more as a string, And then when I'm ending this whole else if else statement, I just write the word end. Okay, that way I don't have to put semicolons. And it's very clear where this if begins and where it ends. That's one of the nice things about like Ruby and Crystal, that whole adding the word end. You're wasting a whole line on the word end, but it's very clear and easy to read. So let's run that. So it should put 5. So it should put 5 or more. Let's see here. When will it run? Yep, 5 or more. Okay, so it works. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. And then loops. Now, cool thing about Ruby is that there's also what's called an unless. And again, so that means the same thing in Crystal. And unless is just the opposite of an if statement. It's not do this if it's true, it's do this if it's false. Other than Ruby and Crystal, I don't know of any other languages that have that, which is neat. I mean, literally you could do the same thing with an if statement, but semantically it's nice to have more variance to make it easier to read. So yes, I could just do an if statement that says if this is not true in the expression, but having a separate keyword, I can see how it has a semantic benefit in the sense of my ability to read code faster if I'm reading other developers' code and trying to understand their intention. So that's very cool. So unless my var is less than 5, puts my var. So in this case, since this is not true, this time it will put my var. So let's run that code and wait for it to happen. Do 5. Okay, so it puts my var. I ran this because it's not true. It is not 5 is not less than 5. Cool. Okay, so those are like conditionals. Now let's talk about loops. Once again, we got some great variety when it comes to loops here, kind of like Ruby, where you have sort of one if it's true and one if it's false. Okay, so we have, I don't think there are 4 loops in Crystal, and I'm not sure if there's 4 loops in Ruby. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I don't remember there being any 4 loops when I was reading the docs for Crystal. Okay, so basically it would work like so. We'll say index equals 0 while index is less than 5. We will put the index, and then we're going to, I don't think incrementing was here either, was it? Let's find out. Index plus plus. Or I can just be clear and just be like index plus 1, same deal. Okay, and then again I end that while loop. So this will again increment index each time by 1, and we'll basically print on the screen 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Assuming I did this right. But looking at it, I'm pretty confident I did it right. Again, it's pretty straightforward syntax, so it's pretty easy to pick up. Okay, nice. But then I could also do until. Until is the same thing as a while, except it keeps doing it while it's false. Okay, so long as it's false, so I'd have to switch this to a greater than. So it'll keep looping until index is greater than 5, so it'll actually count to 5 this time. So this time it should be, yep, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because it's until index is 6 that the statement eventually becomes true. So you have an until loop. That is neat. Now functions I felt were fairly weird here in Crystal. So in Crystal, there are no sort of like, I didn't see a proper like function. Basically, it seemed like everything is an object in Crystal, similar to JavaScript, except you have functions in JavaScript. So basically, any sort of named function would have to be done through a class. So you would create a class, and then you would name like the function methods. I don't want to get into classes for this video. It's the same logic across all programming languages. I just want to kind of get into the basic syntax and give you a nice flavor for the language. But the functions were interesting, okay? Because the way the function works here is that if I did want to have a function that's not attached to a class or an object, okay, what I have to do is do something like this. We'll call this hello. Okay, and then I use this syntax. See if I remember exactly how this is set up. Pretty sure it's like, okay, this is the parameter x. Then I think we do the curly brackets for, actually, do we do curly brackets? I think we're gonna have to look this up. So let's go look up the Crystal documentation. Okay. This is what's referred to as a proc. So basically, kind of like there's arrow functions in JavaScript or lambdas in Python. It's just an anonymous function. Okay, and it uses an arrow, just a different looking arrow. But the exact syntax just escaped me, even though it was just like 2 days ago I was looking at this. But you guys know how it is. Always having to look at the docs. Okay, and then comments are pound signs, kind of like in Python. Proc. Here's proc. Okay, there we go. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. Yep. Let's see here. Okay, so in this case, I don't want to take any parameters. So I could take no parameters and just say, hey, puts hello world. Okay, and there is my function. So I do use curly brackets. Okay, now if I want to call the function, what happens is it stores an object in your variables, and in that object that's stored in hello has a property called call that calls that function that proc you just stored inside of it. It's an interesting behavior, but that's how it works. So I can't just do like hello parentheses. I gotta do hello dot call parentheses. I gotta call that proc that's stored in hello. So this should run eventually and say hello world. And see, it says hello world. Now since we're here, let's go take a look at the classes real quick, just to show you how that would work. I mean, you have switches, which are referred to as cases here. Let's see here, classes. Where are you? Classes. Okay, and pretty straightforward. Class, person. Okay. Let's look at a better example. Here we go. Def age, def name. So basically what's happening here is here we're establishing that we're creating a class. We use the def to define a method or function of that class, and then initializes for be like the constructor. So here's the constructor of the class, and this is just another function called name and age. Okay, although let's take a look at what this @ symbol means here, which is described right here. We'll store this information in instance variables. So let's say you can't do much with person, so let's add some concepts. A person has a name and an age, and everything is an object section. We say that object has a type, response is some methods, which is the only way to interact with objects. So we'll need both a name and an age methods. We will store this information in instance variables, which is always prefixed with @ character. We also want a person to come into existence with a name of our choice and age 0, so we code the come into. Got it. So basically what we're saying here is that basically the only way to access the variables, you actually have to literally create a function that just returns that variable. It's the only way to interact with it. Okay, so in that case, when we create this new person, and then instead of this, you have @. So basically when it says @name, it's like using this .name in JavaScript. It's just saying the instance's copy of the username of name. Okay, and essentially when you're accessing the variable, you're using dot notation, but you actually have to explicitly define those methods to access those properties, which is an interesting way of doing things. Cool. So that's basic introduction to the Crystal programming language. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Again, this wasn't supposed to be a thorough, you're now a master of Crystal, but a lot of times people hear about programming languages, just the idea of it's very intimidating, or where they should start. Now you know some basic syntax, you can practice it on REPL. So yeah, go try it out, have fun, leave a comment, share with friends. Have a great day and enjoy.